Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of PNP's Den of Antiquities. Today, we're going to be talking about episode 5 of Ahsoka, the Shadow Warrior. And man, was this episode was crazy. I mean, we in the watch party, we were all silent throughout the whole thing. I know I personally didn't talk throughout literally the whole. Usually we leave little comments or say stuff that we like, but I was just zoomed into the screen, As somebody who grew up with the prequel trilogy, I saw the Clone Wars movie in the theaters, and then, growing up with the Clone Wars show, this is everything we've ever wanted from live action Clone Wars. In my group chats and in my, YouTube chats and all that stuff in the roundtables, we've always mentioned how we want to see live action Clone Wars this or live action Clone Wars that, and I feel like we got so much within this episode. And sorry if I sound a little shaky or a little choked up, while I'm talking about this, by the way, because it's just it took me a while to process this episode, and I still get choked up even talking about it now. But with that being said, I think that going forward, they should just let Dave Filoni do everything. And let me kind of rephrase that. I think he doesn't have to direct every show or every movie, but what I would like for him to be is to write everything, because the level of detail that he's given us would just the Ahsoka series in general, but really just these last 2 episodes have been some of the best Star Wars that I've ever seen. I mean, he's knocking it out of the park. So I'd honestly be okay with having less Star Wars content if that means he helmed every project. And like I said, he doesn't have to direct every episode or every movie, but I want him to be right there with whoever is doing it, because I think he knows Star Wars. He knows, personally, as for me as a Star Wars fan, he knows what I want. I feel what he's trying to convey on the screen, and I think he's just knocking it out of the park. And it really shows, because I'm not going to get on a Kenobi tangent, but like, if you take the Kenobi series and you take Ahsoka, I mean, it's not even close. It's night and day, and I just wish that they would have maybe had him or, something to give a little bit more care to Kenobi, because I think Kenobi could have hit this exact same way given the right circumstances. But back to Ahsoka. We start on Cetos, where it pans over the planet. You get to see the crashing waves by the altar, the red trees, and it's a beautiful scenery. And we get to see that the map is destroyed. It's laying by the altar right where Balin hit it with his saber. And I'm going to talk a little bit about Hera and Jacen first, because I feel like a good chunk of this episode is going to be me talking about the Clone Wars, because that's the part that I care about the most. It was very cool to see Jacen be force sensitive, and continuing to kind of feel these, tremors through the Force, even though he's not trained as a Jedi. I did think it was a little strange that Hera could hear the lightsaber crashing with Jacen. I would have felt like, I think the scene would have played out the same if she would have just trusted her son and been like, okay, I don't hear anything, but if you hear it, we'll kind of go on your feelings, knowing that he is the son of Kanan Jarrus, and that he does have special abilities that are out of the realm of people like her. Now, she might be a little bit force sensitive. I know there's arguments that people say Han Solo is. I think she kind of falls into that category of maybe being like able to tap into the Force without even knowing it, sort of, so to speak, like when she's flying and she feels the connection with flying and being up in the air. Hera in this series reminds me a lot of Han, Luke, and Leia and the Heir to the Empire, where they're kind of, or really mostly Leia, but I say Han and Leia because, she's kind of a mixture of both, where she knows what she has to do and she kind of does it anyway without the New Republic's blessing, or, they didn't have a mission to go there, so she's getting in trouble. That's like one of the whole parts of her part. And they do that a lot in the Heir to the Empire, where there's a lot of like Han Solo and Lando and Leia and Luke going and doing things that they don't necessarily have permission for, and they're kind of going underneath the radar. So I kind of like those little small nods to Heir to the Empire. And then we get the transition into the World Between Worlds with Anakin and Ahsoka, and We get right off the bat, we get a little bit of their Clone Wars style banter, where he's like, oh, you look old. And he's like, oh, you look the same. And I thought, the one thing that was really interesting is I was wondering why Anakin did look the same as he was in Revenge of the Sith. Because at the end of Return of the Jedi, he has more traditional Jedi robes on, which they're like tan and light brown, kind of like Obi's in the Revenge of the Sith and also in the original trilogy. And I kind of have two thoughts on this. One, it could literally just be because which is the more practical one, is all they did was switch Sebastian Stan and Hayden Christensen's head in Return of the Jedi, and that's why he has those robes. They didn't go in and change. Or it's because Ahsoka last saw Anakin wearing that. So that's what he appears to her as, because he was wearing his Revenge of the Sith attire when they parted ways in the Clone Wars show. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But we get, their banter back and forth. And then Anakin says, I'm here to finish your training, which is so cool, man. I love that even beyond, he's trying to teach and give Ahsoka his knowledge. And this whole lesson, which we're going to get into a little later, like, I really like it. I think it shows how much Anakin has mastered his dark side and his light side, because this whole lesson that he gives is kind of vague. It's left for interpretation. He's kind of giving a lesson. I almost feel like how Yoda would give a lesson. It's almost backwards. It's a little, it's not like, hey, go here, do this. Oh, you're doing that. You need to stop doing. It's very like, let your apprentice find the path themselves, but you're showing them the door, but they have to step through it, so to speak. And of course, the lesson is live or die. That he says at the very beginning, he says it at the end, and they constantly say it throughout the whole flashback. But I really like that Ahsoka doesn't want to fight Anakin, much like Luke doesn't want to fight Darth Vader / Anakin in Return of the Jedi. And she says, I don't want to fight you. And it's not the exact same thing, but Luke says, I'm not going to fight you, and lowers his weapon, and Darth Vader's like, it's unwise to lower your defenses, and then they go into battle. And it kind of the same thing happens here with Anakin, where he's just like, I've heard that before. And it was just a little nod to Return of the Jedi that I really enjoyed. But they go into this almost Mortal Kombat style, like side scroller fighting, which it is so cool. We get to see his classic Obi Annie when he's spinning. I mean, there's a lot going on there. So we get through them fighting, and Ahsoka kind of pulls this move where she hits him, and then they both kind of smile at each other. And she's like, oh, well, looks like you might not have much to teach me. And he goes, you still have a lot to learn, and slices the floor. Oh man, that transition was so cool. I didn't even know that those Between Worlds could break, because we see Palpatine's like flames go across it in Rebels, and nothing really happens. But I guess the Saber Slash does it. But that transition from her in Between Worlds falling into one of the first battles in the Clone Wars was amazing. Like the transitions in the show in general, which we'll get to some a little later, are just flawless in my opinion. They're done so well. And the setting and the ambience that's going on in this scene, it almost reminded me a little bit of Geonosis at the beginning, because they had a lot of like the dust and the orange going around, and you can barely see anything, and it's really foggy. But we get to see Ahsoka come up off the ground, and she's young Ahsoka, which the actress that they picked for young Ahsoka literally killed it. Like, she looks exactly like it. It didn't take me out. It didn't break the immersion. It's so great. And then we get to see Hayden and his Clone Wars armor that we see in the Clone Wars TV show. And he's talking to her about the Clone Wars and like what she needs to do and needs to keep fighting and keep going. And then we get live action Phase 1 Clone Troopers. We've never gotten live action Phase 1 Clone Troopers before. This is the very first time, and I know for a lot of clone people, this is like very important. And we get to see not only regs or regular Clone Troopers, which are the plain ones, but we also get to see blue lieutenants, which is also super cool, because we get to see, I believe it's red, yellow, and green in the Attack of the Clones movie. We get to see those, but those were all CGI generated. Those weren't live action. So as a clone fan, it was super cool to see that. And I think now all we have left are the Commandos and ARC Troopers that we haven't seen live action. So hopefully we get some of those too. We also get LAATs flying down and landing and dropping more troops off and taking off. And then we get the ATTEs, which you see all over the Clone Wars. They're in the video games, they're in the shows, they're the giant, basically crawling tanks with a giant cannon on it. And that, I mean, it just really teleported me back to when I was a little kid. You know, like I said, I grew up with the prequel trilogy. And I think I was in like 3rd grade when Attack of the Clones came out. So I literally felt like a little kid watching this, you know, because this was my childhood, and it was crazy. And kind of going back to Anakin again, I'm going to be talking a lot about Anakin in this. So the man doesn't age. Like, I couldn't tell the parts were de-aged, not de-aged. Like, he literally, you can tell that he's older, obviously, because you can't hide that. But to me, it teleported me back to Attack of the Clones, to the Clone Wars. Like, he literally looks exactly like he does. Well, obviously not in the Clone Wars because it's animated style, but you know what I mean. And I just never thought that we would get this outfit live action. You know, we, like I said, my buddies and I, we're always talking about it in our group chats and our round tables. And if we've said it once, we've said it 100 times. And it's just so crazy that they delivered on this. And not only did we get live action Anakin, live action Phase 1, and the lieutenants, we got Phase 1 Rex, which was so cool to see. We've been wanting Rex in live action forever now. And even though he was in the back kind of talking about to the Twi'leks, I don't know, it was just super cool. I'm so glad that we even got what we did get, you know. And the thing that I like, I think, most about the first flashback is that it plays on a lot of the themes that happened in Clone Wars. You know, Ahsoka goes and puts her hand on that clone trooper he's got his face all wrapped up and he's hurting, and he puts his hand over hers. And, you know, one of the big things in the Clone Wars is the clones are always questioning, you know, what they're fighting for. As the war goes on, they're questioning what they're fighting for and their purpose. And it shows that the clones weren't just like a maskless, faceless person. They were actually human beings that felt stuff. And it really captures that in that scene, you know, because she looks at Anakin and Anakin's like, hey, we got to go. The droids are mounting another attack. And she's basically like feeling remorse and guilt for leading these troops into battle and having them be hurt and having them die. And, you know, she doesn't want that. She wants to be, you know, a keeper of the peace. She doesn't want to be a warrior. And I really like the dialogue between her and Anakin, because Anakin was like, when I was a Padawan, we were keepers of the peace. There wasn't any war. There wasn't anything. We didn't have to be soldiers. But you have to adapt with the times and change. And that's why he's training her to be a warrior. And she's very conflicted about that. And she's like, is that what all I'm going to have to teach my Padawan? Meaning Sabine, you know, she doesn't know that obviously. But I just thought that was interesting. And I love the dialogue between her and Anakin. And I really like that theme of you either live or you die, because she doesn't want to fight. She's tired of fighting, but Anakin's like, well, if you don't, you're dead. You die, because when you're in war, you don't just get to throw up the towel and be done. You're fighting for your lives, and not only your life, but lives of hundreds of thousands of other clones. You know, you don't have that choice. And then we get the pan of her kind of backing out, watching Anakin march forward. And again, man, these shots, like some of my favorite shots in this show so far, is Anakin's walking with his saber out, and then an explosion happens, and then it turns into Darth Vader, and then it goes quickly back to Anakin. And man, I mean, those two shots alone are probably some of my favorite shots in Star Wars. Like they just look so cool, and it backs out and fans into her just kind of watching all the Ryloth soldiers and the clones running into action, the ATTEs marching forward, and the whole shot was so cinematic, and it was honestly my favorite out of this episode for sure, and out of the whole series, I would say. And then it goes right into the Siege of Mandalore, which is like one of the coolest Clone Wars arcs. I never thought in a million years that we were going to get that live action or even like a snippet of it live action. But her taking on the Mandalorians, which if you don't know what the Mandalorians are, they're just the Mandalorian group Death Watch under Darth Maul's rule. Darth Maul takes over Mandalore in the Clone Wars. And they paint their armor like Darth Maul, like all his tattoos, and they have horns on their helmets. So if you didn't know why they were fighting that, that's why, because that all happens in the Clone Wars show. But like seeing her spin around and jumping and moving, and then not only do we get a Phase 1 Rex, but we get a Phase 2 Rex from the Clone Wars Season 7. And man, while his outfit does have some problems, his elbows are like pointed to the side for some reason instead of put to the back. And then I didn't notice this one, a lot of my armor buddies did, is that his bicep armor is actually backwards, like they flipped it for some reason. But other than that, I thought it was great. It didn't take me out. I thought the elbows were a little weird, but like I said, being able to see a live action Rex is way more important to me than like nailing down his costume 100%. I mean, yeah, of course you want it to be as accurate as possible, but just even seeing it and hearing Tim's voice come back, because we didn't get to see, unfortunately, they didn't bring back Tim for any of the characters, the clones, but man, it was great. And then Anakin comes out of the smoke and is like, I don't remember this battle. And you know, they have some dialogue and exchange words, and she can't let go of the fact that he turned into Darth Vader, which I think makes sense, but he's there to push her to kind of be like, as a Jedi or a Force wielder, you have to not hold on to these things that have happened. He says he's more than just being Darth Vader. He's more than just being Anakin. He's more than just destruction and death and chaos and peace. And so is she, because he's taught her everything. And she doesn't really understand what's going on. She kind of questions him. And then we get Dark Side Anakin, which, man, that was the coolest thing. If you guys don't know, I'm actually building an Anakin cosplay right now, and I wanted to do a dark side version where I get the contacts and the red saber, and this just fuels that so much. I mean, we the only time we've seen a dark side Anakin like that is in the Revenge of the Sith video game. It's one of the alternate endings where he actually is successful at stabbing Obi-Wan when he's doing the high ground flip, and Palpatine gives him his Darth Vader saber, and then he ends up igniting it. It's red, and stabs Palpatine. It's a super crazy alternate ending. If you haven't gone and checked that out, I would highly recommend it, because it's just so cool. I never would have thought that we would have gotten that in a show, and this show, man, every time I describe it as I feel like I was getting punched in the face like rapidly. It's like you get young Ahsoka, you get Clone Wars Anakin, you get real live action Phase 1 clones, you get the lieutenants, you get Phase 1 Rex, you get Phase 2 Rex, like the LAATs, it's just everything. The Siege of Mandalore, I felt like I kept getting hit in the face like so many times, and it was awesome, and it was heartbreaking at the same time, because anybody who's grown up with this knows that it's not easy watching all this stuff. It's like you want to see it and you enjoy it, you love it, but it brings so much emotions. It's almost like a roller coaster that you're on. It's, you know, he kicks, going back to the actual episode out of my tangent, he kicks her, goes back into the world between worlds, and she ends up doing the same move that he does to Dooku, that Anakin does to Dooku in episode 3, when he disarms him and then she doesn't obviously slice off his hands, but it's the same disarming move. And I believe in the control room when Obi-Wan and Anakin are fighting, Anakin tries to do that with Obi-Wan, but he maneuvers out of it too. So I like those little saber combats. The sabers, honestly, combat has been on point the whole time. And then I really like, I don't know if she turns Sith for a second or if it's just the red saber going really close to her face, but I love that she almost looked like she had Sith eyes, and then she deactivates the saber and tosses it away. Very similar to Luke, you know, except Luke looks at his hand and is like, what am I doing? but the same toss, the same everything. And then Anakin goes back to his original self with the blue eyes. He's the Jedi again. And I really love that they're showing how much control Anakin has in this like spirit realm after, passing on. He's completed his task. He's destroyed all the Jedi and he's destroyed the Emperor. He fulfilled his chosen one prophecy and became who he needed to become. And now he's helping Ahsoka do the exact same thing. And then once the combat's done, Anakin says, hey, there's hope for you yet, because Ahsoka chose to live and she got her fighting spirit back. And I think that was really the main message out of this whole thing, is that Anakin was trying to give her hope back and her fighting spirit back. She was kind of, like I said, almost like a ghost, at the start of the season. She's very somber. She's very, crossing her arms all the time, very sad, very not optimistic like we see her in a lot of the other stuff. And I think Anakin was trying to push her to that point. And she's stubborn, just like Sabine's stubborn, just like Anakin's stubborn. So the only way to get through to that is really to push them to their edge. And he did that perfectly. Dave did that perfectly. And I really love the scene too, after he vanishes and the water comes up. It's almost like it's like a baptism or a cleanse or something like that, where she's shedding the old Ahsoka that she used to be and being revived into this new version of Ahsoka. And I really like it because it almost reminded me of, if you guys see in Pirates of the Caribbean 3, when they're trying to get back from the spirit world and they're tossing the ship upside down. It kind of reminded me a little bit of that. But we wake up with Ahsoka back on the ship. She was saved by Hera and the Rebel, the New Republic, not Rebel, troopers. And it's kind of weird seeing Ahsoka without a headband. I'm not gonna lie, it wasn't like a crazy thing. It made sense. It was just, we don't see Ahsoka really ever without a headband. So that was a surprising fate. But she walks out of her Jedi starship and is talking with Hera, and Hera wants to know where Sabine is. And the cool thing about that scene, I think, is that when she goes to grab the map, we didn't know if she had psychometry, which, if you guys don't know what that is, it's basically like a look into the past. Like, you can touch an object or like anything that has to do, and it leaves like an imprint, almost like, how you would theorize like ghosts and like ghosts appearing in house, like ghosts leave an imprint on something within the house and then they appear because the object is nearby. It's the same kind of thing with the Force, except you can kind of see the events play out. So she sees Sabine hand the map to Baylan and her leaving with Baylan and all that stuff. But it's cool because we didn't know that she had that ability. She kind of does it a little earlier in the season, but we don't know if that's just like her sensing the Force presence, not like actually seeing the whole scene play out or anything like that. But I think this kind of solves that mystery, and that they start to devise a plan on how to get her back, Sabine back. I really like how they gave Ahsoka her outfit from the end of the season of Rebels, where she's like almost like an all white. She's almost like Gandalf. When he comes back, he's in all white and he's all pimped out, so to speak. And her outfit looked super cool. I'm excited to see her. I hope she uses it for the rest of the season, but she's in black and gray and she's all somber. And now she's Ahsoka, what we call her Ahsoka the White, and she's smiling and she's happy and she's optimistic. And then we see her kind of like connecting with the whale. I'm guessing asking if she could like barter passage on the whale to go find Ezra. So her and Hu Yang land in the whale's mouth, which is it's a little goofy, but kind of cool at the same time. I like the Purgles and the journey that she's about to go on with them. So like I said, man, this episode was, as a Clone Wars and prequels fan, this is everything I wanted. It's still very hard for me to process everything and to talk about all this stuff. I hope you guys enjoyed me in my rambles, and I would love to hear what you guys have to say down in the comment section down below. This is one of my favorite things is talking to this community. Our community isn't very big, but I love talking with you guys and hearing your thoughts and your theories. And even if we don't agree and have the same opinions, I still love hearing how you're processing this. This is the whole reason why I created this channel. And I look forward to doing the roundtable this weekend as well, because I originally started this channel to make more Star Wars friends like you guys, and also, you know, people from the community and stuff like that. And it's some of my favorite times. I look forward to it every week, and it's the highlight of my week. So if you guys want to come check that out, every Saturday after the show at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, we do a live roundtable where we sit, we answer your questions, we talk about our theories and our thoughts on it. And I think this one's going to be a really good one because myself, you know, as a prequel and Clone Wars fans, but I know everybody else that's in my group is also, that's what they grew up with, that's what they love. So this one's really going to be a really rich one. So thank you guys for watching, and as always, may the Force be with you.